on the slide deck. If you would like to use that to click on the links, you can. You can use the chat, and David Sale will have access to it, so he can try to keep an eye on that and share things there. But just so you know, we have this interactive Google Deck now that you can use. So the first slide is the link, has links in it. And then the second slide is Q&A. So if you have any questions that you would like to type in there for us to respond to during the meeting or read through afterwards, feel free to do that. So with that, we'll go ahead and launch in today's presentation. We'll be talking about impacts and indicators related to the RVA Green 2050 buildings and energy strategies that we've prioritized at the previous meeting. So for today's agenda, we'll be going into settling in. Thank you for going around and sharing who you are. We'll be reviewing the revised strategies from the prioritization activity from last time. And the key concept we'll be talking about today is impact mapping. So we'll spend some time introducing you to that and walking through that activity, which will be actually making the impact maps for those prioritized strategies. And then in conclusion, we'll just wrap up as usual and talk about some next steps. So today's objective, really thinking about what are we trying to impact when we're thinking about the buildings and energy pathway and all of our strategies. And then what does success look like for each strategy? And what is our shared understanding of what is achievable? So Wendy, could I ask you to go through the ground rules?
You may. Sure. So our ground rules are the same as they have been. Just be respectful, be present, everyone participate, no one dominate, be additive, not repetitive. We're going to aim for consensus, be open to new ideas, bring solutions to any problems, separate people from problems, speak from your own experience. Let's see, we don't have the thumb on Zoom anymore, but let's get down. I guess we need to modify this. And then our Elmo rule, like enough, let's move on. And I know some of the other groups use the 7-second rule too. If we have silence for more than 7 seconds, then we'll kind of keep moving on. So.
Great, thank you. All right, so where we are in the process, we developed and refined the strategies last time. I'll be sharing those with you today, and then we're moving into creating the implementation framework and defining the metrics for measuring success. So that's pretty exciting that we're in the real trenches of the planning process development now. So just to remind you, last time, for those of you who weren't here, we went through all of the strategies for buildings and energy. We had a prioritization matrix, and with lots of criteria that they were scored on and with weighted categories, and then got your input on how to organize them better, which ones we could kind of let go or table for now, and which ones could be rolled up into others. So really focused on which strategies will most help us achieve our 2030 goals. And then, you know, are we comfortable with the number of strategies that we prioritized in thinking about us being accountable to the success of this plan? So today, we're going to be asking the questions, what are the potential impacts of our strategies, and how can those impacts inform the indicators that we're going to use to measure the success of our overall plan? As you know, every strategy has a whole lot of co-benefits, and we want to make sure that we're really identifying the impacts that are most important to our community. So over the next 2 meetings, we'll be meeting again July 14th and August 4th, and we'll be thinking about how will we equitably implement the plan, how will we ensure accountability and transparency, and then we'll be launching into another public engagement period during the month of September. So that's what's coming up. Okay, so just to remind you about this structure that we've been working on all year. So the purpose are the goals and the vision. What does the ideal future look like when RVA Green 2050 is implemented? the community priorities that we spent time talking through with the equity tool. The pathways are each of the working groups. The objectives we developed. So the Buildings and Energy Pathway has 4 objectives, the long-term aims we want to accomplish. And then we've gone through the prioritized strategies. So those are the strategies that will help us achieve our goals. And now starting to identify the SMARTY actions that will lead us there. And the strategy language already has some of the actionable language in it. So this is a very iterative process. We keep building on each step of the way. And so today we're down to the impacts, thinking about how our strategies will impact the community and lead to more equitable, resilient, and adaptive Richmond. And that's going to lead into how we measure success through indicators, and then the implementation framework. Okay, so the refined strategies, ready? After the exercise at the last meeting, we went back through and redistributed them based on all of your input, and found that the Buildings and Energy has the most, of course. Buildings and Energy is a lot to try to roll up. So there are 12 there, 10 in the community group, 9 in transportation, 9 in environment, and 9 in waste. And it's this was a nice, we spent a lot of time last time talking about that distribution of the scoring and the weights, and how are we centering equity, and how are we scaling all of this. And we really feel good about where we landed. So that's what the overall distribution looks like. And then we took all the feedback and refined those strategies accordingly, and presenting back to you today so we can move on to the next step. So the first one, the objective was achieve climate neutrality and increase resilience in government buildings, infrastructure, and operations. So just to remind you, this is the objective where city operations and buildings were leading by example. So there are there are 4 strategies in this objective. So the first one is the energy management program. This is developing a program to achieve energy efficiency goals. And under that were 4 subcomponents that you all prioritize as important. So the LED street lighting, benchmarking city buildings, prioritizing retrofits, and creating an energy manager position. And then the second strategy is achieving net zero buildings. So within that, we have incorporate electrification requirements, catalog and track natural gas usage of all city buildings, require green building standards, and phase out fossil fuel dependence in contracts. And then the third one under this lead by example is climate projections. So establishing a protocol for tracking greenhouse gas emissions and planning for the impacts. So the 2 subcomponents are create a tracking protocol and then incorporate a review of city operations every 5 years. And then finally, a climate vulnerability and risk assessment. So we spent some time on that back in January together, but it's really building that out more and truly identifying the risks and keeping that front and center as we prioritize resilience projects in the future. So that's the first objective. The second one is maximize energy efficiency, performance, and resilience in all existing buildings, and that's throughout Richmond. So the first one is focused on energy burden and reducing the energy burden of Richmond's most vulnerable communities. So facilitate energy efficiency upgrades is one piece of that, establishing partnerships to provide equitable thermal comfort, and then educate about electrification. Then the second strategy under objective 2 is efficiency programs. So within that one, we have join the statewide PACE program, require retro commissioning for existing commercial buildings, develop and promote a green business challenge and/or certification program, benchmark existing commercial buildings, and require an equitable building performance policy. So that's a lot to take on, but I think we can all agree that those are all pretty important elements of getting at the goals of this plan. And then the third strategy under this objective is the construction and energy performance strategy. Within that are two subcomponents to facilitate the energy code adoption and enforce energy efficiency requirements during plan review. So objective 3 is ensure all Richmonders have equitable access to affordable and renewable clean energy. Under that one, we have solar installations. We have incentives and accessibility, and under there you have incentivizing opportunities for ground-mounted solar, providing funding for microgrids and battery backup, fully exempt solar from property tax increases, and improve access to renewable energy. So that's the second strategy. And then the third one is workforce development. The fourth objective, achieving a climate neutrality and maximize resilience in all new construction. So we have two strategies under there: net zero energy design, where we would have a central repository of funding opportunities and incentives, promoting legislation, and requiring solar readiness measures for all new buildings. And then the second one is developing resilient design guidelines. So that's where we landed. I hope you all feel like we're headed in the right direction with all of this. It's pretty all-encompassing. We have some more opportunity to dig a little deeper into some of the details, and this next activity is going to get us there. So, any questions for me at this point? Okay, excellent. So, strategy impact mapping. What in the world is it? So the purpose of impact mapping is it's a framework for describing and measuring the wider impacts of urban climate action. So the strategies, as we know, they produce multiple benefits, and those then become powerful tools for better designed climate actions, and also really critical to reducing barriers to action and getting approvals and explaining why we need to prioritize these strategies to the decision makers. So we're identifying the impacts that staff and other stakeholders can then connect to indicators, and then we can use that to measure and track plan implementation and accountability. So we'll be thinking about how we're getting from this impact mapping to developing the indicators. This is the step that staff will do after today's activity, and then we'll come up with more development of the plan as we identify those indicators. So in yesterday's email, you had an attachment with a C40 guide, and that's just kind of a reference tool to help you during this activity. But to just give you a little more background on what this is. So the C40 group put together the Urban Climate Action Impacts Framework to help cities explore the wider impacts of city climate action. And if you want to think of it as a, every impact has distributed measures. So we want to make sure that, as we've been talking all along, we're really getting at whether or not it's equitable, and that equity is centered at the core of this approach. So for example, as we've heard lots of examples of why it's important to center equity, but in this one, if we're looking at, this strategy will produce jobs, but if it's just producing jobs where we already have plenty of employment, especially with high-skilled workers, but maybe it's taking away from areas of high unemployment, then it's inequitable and possibly damaging. So we want to be thinking about all those potential impacts that are coming out of these strategies. There are pathway steps, starting with the action, down to the outputs, down to the outcomes, down to the impacts. Those 4 terms we're going to be going over those a lot today. And so the difference between what each one is important for us to all get clear in our heads. So let me go back to the mapping structure. So the sector on their framework is what we're calling our objectives. And then their actions are our strategies and the subcomponents of our strategies that I just went over. Staff has taken a shot at identifying the outputs for you to get you started, but then you'll be working on the outcomes and the impacts. And that's what we're going to use to help identify potential indicators. We're looking for those measurable variables. So those are the intermediary steps. The outputs and outcomes are, those steps we don't want to miss that are really important to get us from the strategy down to our impacts. Okay, so then these are the actual definitions. So the sector is the area, our objectives that I just went over. The strategies are those policies and programs or investments that we're initiating, that we've prioritized. The outputs are what a strategy produces. So it could be a service, a facility, an infrastructure, or a financial tool. But the outcome is the change generated by the output. So I like to think of them as the output is the thing, and the outcome is the activity that results from it, or the change that results from it. And then from that change, you'll identify the impacts, and those are the medium or long-term effects of the outcomes. Some examples are increased or decreased air pollution, improved safety, improved physical health, decrease in city spending. There are pros and cons of every strategy, so we do want to identify both. In terms of the types of impacts, so this is really what we want to get out of you today, are identifying all of those impacts that connect the strategies back to our community priorities, and also to, really what we're trying to get out of this plan, which is reducing our carbon footprint, our greenhouse gas emissions, improving our resiliency to flooding and urban heat islands and excessive storms, being resilient. And then, of course, the 7 community priorities I wanted to just remind you, we always want to circle it back to, promoting racial equity and supporting those historically disenfranchised communities. We want to think about how can we be more accountable as a government and promote transparency. How can we build community wealth, increase jobs, education access? How about housing and buildings? What's the potential to expand affordable housing and reduce housing cost burden? So while, especially with buildings and energy, every strategy could help make our buildings better, but we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the underserved populations or the historically disenfranchised, that's really the impact that we're trying to get at, not just kind of continuing to provide resources to those who may already have them. The neighborhoods, we want to support beautiful and safe neighborhoods. That's a community priority from Richmonders. And of course, health, potential to promote physical and mental health and well-being, and engagement and communications. How can we use our strategies to support equitable engagement and communication? On this slide, this is just an example of one of the 5 pages of the attachment that I sent you yesterday. These impacts, things like biodiversity or air quality, water quality, those are just some of the environmental impacts. Make sure I didn't miss any notes here. Okay, so it's a systemic perspective. City life is highly interconnected. We all know the environment, society, and economy all impact each other in complex dynamics. For example, people's health and prosperity are intimately dependent on environmental management and biodiversity. Safety and fairness of jobs enhances physical and mental health. Government accountability and community engagement improve all aspects of city life, from community scale projects that enhance neighborhoods, livability, and better design and monitoring of our own policies. And then the aesthetic quality and cultural heritage of Richmond are drivers of tourism and economic prosperity, things that allow us to continue to improve the quality of life of all Richmonders. Improved equality is directly related to trust, civic participation, social cohesion, and ultimately sustainability of our population. So again, that C40 guide is just a reference tool, but it's not exhaustive. So there are all kinds of impacts we want you to be thinking about, and each one of you is bringing a different perspective, an area of expertise, and lived experience. So looking for all kinds of input. Okay, so this is an example of one. We took the workforce development strategy. It says establish training programs, apprenticeships, and a conservation corps or job placement program in low income and diverse neighborhoods to build capacity for jobs related to solar installation and maintenance, as well as weatherization upgrades and energy efficiency auditing. For example, prison to solar training. So that's one of the strategies that you all prioritized. So what we've done is on all of the maps is identify the strategy components. So workforce development with these three kind of subcomponents: training programs, apprenticeships, conservation corps, and job placement. Now, I am not an expert on any one of those. I think each of those could be defined a little differently. Each of them might do something a little differently or get at different populations. So if you have ideas that aren't included on here, we would love for you to give us that feedback. But what the output of all three of those we thought is skilled workers. That's really the output of the workforce development program. Is once we have skilled workers, then the outcome is the expanded solar sector and capacity in Richmond. If we have more skilled workers, we have more companies doing the installations, and therefore more publicity and marketability and more community education. And then that's going to lead to more employment, job opportunities, and installations. But we really want to get at what are the impacts that are going to reach the broadest stakeholders in Richmond. Well, if you really dig down to more employment, you're looking at reduced crime, reduced poverty. More job opportunities also goes to reduce poverty. Increased solar installations goes to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improved air quality and lower energy bills and energy burden. And I'm sure each one of you can think of more that you would add to this map, and that would be great. We would love to have any additional thoughts. But at the end of the day, we really want to think about the ones that are most important that should be considered with this strategy and centered in the plan. So that's one example. You want to just keep in mind these different levels. So the output is that the thing, the outcome is the activity, the change that's resulting from that output of the strategy, and then on to the impacts are the most impactful and what's most important down the line. And that's what we'll need metrics to measure. So that's what we're trying to get towards today, is how can we actually consider this these strategies and make sure that they're centered on our priorities. Okay, so that's the activity. What we're going to be doing is going into 5 different groups. Let me show you the instructions here. So we're going to develop the maps of those outputs, outcomes, and impacts for each strategy using the Urban Climate Action Impacts Framework structure. And you're going to each breakout group, there'll be 5 of them, and each group will have 2 strategies. So 30 minutes per strategy, and your facilitator is going to talk you through it. So it's really an interactive dialogue. If you want to if you have access to the slide and you want to add some feedback in the comments, that's great. If you want to kind of take advantage of, for example, up here in workforce development, I can't click on it, it'll go away. So under workforce development, if you wanted to highlight or bold any words, if you have any recommendations for how to make this strategy language any clearer, we are today's the day to really make sure that it's, this is all these strategies, we've taken so much input and we've tried to incorporate so much into them. So where they are today is where they're going to be, unless you have some good ideas on how to make them even better and clearer. But we want to get that feedback in the comments. Certainly, your facilitator will be making all kinds of notes within the slide itself. So for the strategy, you'll be considering this. The first thing you'll want to do when you get in there is really understand what that strategy says, read it together, and then think about business as usual. So if we go back to our example, if we didn't have a workforce development program centered around this, solar and weatherization, what are the impacts of not doing anything, of business as usual? Well, it'll just be the status quo. We'll still be working really hard to educate about solar and why it's important. We'll be trying to do better to, attract solar installers. You guys are the experts, but think about that business as usual case. And with the workforce development program, what change are we really looking for? What are we trying to get at? So that's the first thing you want to do. The second one, thinking about what are the outputs of this strategy with the direct tangible results of the strategy. Again, staff has taken a stab at identifying those outputs. You might be able to think of some others. So please share your thoughts. It's just, you'll see it's kind of an exhaustive brain activity. So we thought it would help to at least get the outputs identified, because outputs, outcomes, and impacts, there's a lot of gray area. So you're going to want to focus on what are the outcomes and then what are the impacts. So the outcomes are the change generated by the output, and then the impacts are, the potential impacts that could result from the strategy. Integrate equity considerations, think about who are the key stakeholders of each of these, what are their priorities and concerns, and how is the strategy potentially impacting them both positively and negatively. And of course, be thinking about the ones that are most significant. We don't need to list every single impact that a strategy could have, but really the ones that are most important to prioritize. So the way we've broken it down, we have 5 facilitators. I will be working on the commercial energy efficiency program strategy and the community construction and energy performance strategy. If you want to be in that group, you can go into the slide and type your name here, or else you can say it out loud and Wendy will type your name in for you. We'll be going into a break while these rooms are divided up, so there'll be some time to talk about it. Wendy's group is going to be talking about community solar, incentives and accessibility, and residential energy burden. David's group is talking about new construction, net zero energy design, and new construction resilient design guidelines. Alexis is going to be covering municipal climate projections and municipal climate vulnerability and risk assessment. And then Alex will be facilitating the municipal energy management program and the municipal net zero buildings. So that's where you're going to be spending your time during the rest of today's meeting, in those breakout rooms. You can go, if you see that you have ones where you can add some expertise that are not in the same breakout room, you can go back in later. We're going to be keeping this open for the next week. And I would love to have one-on-ones with you if you want to schedule a time to talk through any of these, or send emails with more ideas. This isn't your only shot at it, but we do want you to pick the one where you think you have the most to offer. Of course, that's why you're here, right? To make the best use of your time. So at this point, any questions? Okay, great. I'm going to be setting up the rooms. So if you're with me, you'll just stay in the main room. And if you're with one of the others, I'll shoot you over there automatically. It's probably going to take me about 5 minutes to get this set up. So go ahead and type your names in there. or we'll just put you in a random room to even them out. And we'll come back here in 5 minutes, about 11:42.
Hey, Don, this is Joe. I can't really sign in on these. I guess you can just put me in your group or move me if you feel the need.
I can put them in there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Gotta grab something. Any new construction people out there? We need some people in David's group.
Hey, Wendy, this is Ed. You can put me in whatever group is needed. Okay?
Okay. All right, I'll put you in David's group if that's all right.
Sounds fine, thanks.
I don't want to mess up what Don's doing, but let's see.
Can you tell me what community construction and energy performance? Oh, objective 2. I can go look at that. Sorry.
Wendy, you have a lot of requests in the chat for group placement.
Sorry. Okay, let me roll up to that. Gotta go look at a different slide. Let's see. Okay. Oh, they're in this chat. Okay, not the slide chat. Got it. Bill, community solar. Community solar. Okay, so that's mine. Okay. Damien. I might have too many in my group. Sorry. Let's see. Municipal energy. Okay, I already see her in there. Okay, Eric. I'm thinking I'm getting too popular for a change. So Don might have to move some folks out of my group. But we'll see. Let's see. Okay. So I'll still use people in new construction, net zero and resilient design, and also climate projections and vulnerability. You don't have to be an expert on any of these to be in those groups. Let's see, I think Dawn probably needs a couple more minutes, right? Yep, okay, no worries. We've got plenty of time.
This is Josh Young. I can put myself in David's group.
Okay, great, thank you. Andrew's interested in either yours, mine, or David's, but we'll go where needed. So,
All right, yeah, this is tricky signing everyone up.
I know.
So I must have put Fred in a different one. Yes, so he's gonna go back to me, and then Ed, I'm not sure where your phone is, so you might end up separate from your phone. I don't see on Teams I don't see it listed, but
7808.
yeah, it's not like Zoom, like it doesn't have a phone number listed under my choices. So
Here.
I'll be in the main room. If there's a problem, I guess you'll just come back to me.
Okay.
But I think I got you all straight. So
Hey, Don,
Hello?
sorry, just to let you know, this is Kyla. When people call in, they can't be placed into a breakout room on Teams, so they'll be in the main room.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, Ed, thank you, Kyla. Ed, you will be with me in the main room.
Okay. So we probably need somebody to go in David's group because that just leaves Josh so far, unless you have any others that you put in there with him.
I have Andrew, Josh, in with David.
Okay.
I don't mind
this
switching.
is Fred. I can switch. It's not a problem.
The biggest one is, let's see, room 4 or 5 with Alex. We have Adam Hull, Jeff Crawford, Jeanette, and Doug Town. And then in with Alexis is Irina and Maeve. So Rob, it looks like you must have ended up somewhere else. Yep, I have you with Wendy. Okay, I'm gonna move you to Alexis, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when you just randomly go somewhere, but I think we got it. So so I'm gonna send you out. If you need to come back, in the top right corner is a leave breakout button. Be careful not to click the leave meeting button because then you'll have to log back in. But again, I'll be in the main room. So if you need to come back and talk to me at any point and have me send you somewhere else, that is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and start the rooms, and we'll see you back in 1 hour at 12:46. So your moderator is going to kind of coach you along between the two objectives. One might take longer than the other. So you have an hour to get to both of them. Okay, any questions before I send you on your way? All right, there you go. Okay, so I have Ed, Fred, Jessica, Bill, and Joe, and Maeve. Are you all where you wanted to be?
Not for me, this is Ed.
Yeah, I wish I could get you where you want to be, but you don't have a microphone on your computer, right?
Well, I do, but there's too much feedback. I have not
Oh,
solved
right.
the feedback problem.
Well, you know, honestly, if you wanted to go, which one did you feel like you had the most to offer? The municipal energy management program?
Probably, but there's lots of folks in there. You know,
Yeah.
I'll go where needed, Dawn.
Okay. Well, I guess if you wanted, I can't yet send your phone is the only problem. So
Mhm.
we'll
Okay.
we'll just do our best here. And if you wanted to talk through any of the other ones with me, we could schedule a time to do that. So we're going to objective 2. And we are going to be looking at the first one is commercial energy efficiency programs. So this, you know, the idea of this is to maximize energy efficiency, performance, and resilience in all existing buildings. And so under energy efficiency programs, we want to develop policies, incentives, and financing mechanisms to improve commercial energy efficiency and offer assistance and technical expertise to those that are financially challenged and facilitate workforce development. Why don't you guys go ahead and read through the rest of it, and then we'll start talking about it. And Ed, I think I am going to try to send you over to Alex's group, and you can just unmute yourself, even though there's background noise when you get there. You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to send you.
Well, I am all for every one of those bullet points. I don't know where what the challenge is. You know, that sounds exactly what brought me into this industry.
Great.
You know?
Yeah.
Now the requiring retro commissioning. Now to do that, are there like fines and penalties for businesses that don't comply?
Well, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
So let's walk through these outputs, outcomes, and impacts. So joining the CPACE program to facilitate upgrades and encourage builders and developers to hire small women and minority-owned businesses.
Hey, Bill, can you try muting for a moment?
Okay, I think that's better. So, so CPACE, joining CPACE, the output that we identified would be funding for performance improvements. Is there a better way of saying that? Anyone have any, like what's what does this strategy produce? By joining CPACE, it's providing funding, right? Okay, so then what's the outcome? If there's more funding available out there for performance improvements for commercial projects, then what's the change generated?
Economic.
Oh, you know what? I have to get out of this. If I click on this, it's gonna go away.
Hey, Alexis. Hey, Alexis.
All right, so can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so for funding for performance improvements, the outcome is what? More efficiency
Economic.
projects?
Yeah, it lowers that barrier to entry to be able to do it.
Okay, and then what are the impacts of that? Or are there other outcomes? I guess that's the main one, right? We're just lowering barriers. So if there are more efficiency projects out there, what are the impacts to our community?
Well, hopefully lower emissions.
Okay, I think that is going to be over here. It's going to be a final impact.
Mhm.
What were you going to say, Jessica?
More resilient buildings.
Yeah, I think that's another one.
Yeah, I think the financial impacts are pretty good as well. If they have a more efficient building, it means their overhead is probably going to be lower eventually. So whatever goods they produce, or if they're like in the service industry, prices may go down, or they may have more funds to hire more employees.
And the ability to tackle deferred maintenance list.
Okay, so we're going to say, really, I think this probably is.
Well, also you need to bear in mind that energy efficiency sometimes results in more maintenance cost.
Yep.
Because
say that one
of
more
the
time.
technology that's being used, it has to be maintained and in order for it to work.
So new technologies, more maintenance costs, or just different maintenance costs?
Just energy efficient technology, can result in higher maintenance cost. You wouldn't think so, but just in practice, I've seen a lot. Just with current energy efficiency technology, a lot of times it gets defeated because it doesn't work right or has not been maintained. So in order to keep those things tuned, it can result in higher maintenance cost.
Okay.
Yeah, I can second that. A lot of newer technology you do have to consistently calibrate. And in some of these programs that you do, or if you purchase some type of energy efficient measure, sometimes there's a third party that manages some of that. So that some of the charges would go towards that. So yeah, there is definitely a pros and cons to it.
Yeah, there's some trade-offs for sure. And I'm basing, my comment on my experience. Like for example, with air handlers in that are currently in use, they use these control schemes called economizers to rely on outdoor air when it's of a quality that it can be used to cool efficiently. Well, a lot of times what I find is the economizers have been defeated because they're ill maintained. And so then you have to go back and try to make them work. And so not only did you lose the energy efficiency they're supposed to create, but you got to undo what was ill maintained, and that has a cost.
Correct.
Okay, so more efficient buildings. I think this one is actually coming off of here. More energy efficient buildings means lower greenhouse gases, means more funding for other projects. What's another way of saying that it gets at our priorities? higher property values, or I guess are we talking about other projects as in like infrastructure upgrades or just community wealth?
Well, it could be both.
All right. That's a hard one. That we did the environment working group on Monday, and when it ends at that community wealth impact, it sounds good, but how do you measure that? You know, so that's something to think about.
Yeah, that would be like in construction, you have hard costs and soft costs, and sometimes the soft costs are not easily quantifiable.
Right, right. Okay, and then the energy efficiency technology can result in higher maintenance costs. So I'm going to outline that one in red. Any other impacts from more energy efficient buildings? I'm thinking about CPACE.
Well, there's, if you have greater energy efficiency, there could be lower environmental impacts all the way around, not just on emissions, but you may be relying on less fuel consumption by whatever means. Maybe you need to spend less money on solar if you have higher efficient buildings.
Yes, actually, well.
So, that has an impact on raw materials and manufacturing and all that. But,
okay.
The greater the efficiency, the lower the impact on the planet from a materials standpoint.
Okay.
Materials consumption and production.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So we have now on the more resilient buildings one, what are the impacts? That's a good one. What do we want to say for the impacts of having more resilient buildings? Again, due to energy efficiency in commercial buildings, if they're more resilient, how does that help our community from an energy efficiency standpoint?
Well, if they're more resilient, they may have a longer lifespan. So that could reduce future construction cost or renovation cost. Not exactly an impact on the community, but certainly a factor.
What were you going to say, Jessica?
The ability to function during like storms or other impacts. Words not coming to me, but
like continuity of operations or something.
Exactly.
Recovery from disaster events.
Ooh. Yeah.
As in like quicker recovery from disaster events? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Okay, great. So that's All right, then if we jump down to the next one, which is back to this CPACE though, part of that strategy is to encourage builders and developers to hire small women-owned and minority-owned businesses. So there are some employment impacts.
Well, it could reduce unemployment in those sectors, in the minority sector and so forth. Could reduce unemployment or employ more people, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question about that. I brought that up a couple of weeks ago, and there was somebody, and I don't know who it was, but he brought up the idea that there had been legislation calling that, making that illegal, the set-aside contracting thing. I don't know the laws at this time, regarding that, but I know I personally am working for a guy who's a SWAM contractor, So, I mean, I don't know. Joe, have you heard any of this stuff at the larger level?
I haven't, no, I haven't seen anything recently. I have been a SWAM contractor before, believe it or not.
Okay.
And working with, at the Housing Authority, our solicitations don't require it, but it is something that we score proposals and bids on, and by not requiring it, we encourage it. So we want to see that they have a plan. So I don't think there's anything really illegal about that. It's not like a set aside. It's just asking if you have a plan to utilize what we call Section 3 businesses and SWAM businesses. So, we accept bids that, even though a vendor may, or a contractor may not have that, something that's highly technical, for example, where you can't utilize SWAM and minority. So we wouldn't, not select them on that basis. So it's not really a requirement if you follow what I'm saying.
Correct. In some cases, if there's bids out there, all things being equal with bids, if one of them does side more that way, they may win out on the bid, but it doesn't say they're definitely going to.
That's correct. We usually, like I said, we kind of score the bids and proposals, and one of the components of the score would be a SWAM plan,
Yes.
or that kind of thing. But it doesn't necessarily disqualify somebody.
Correct.
If you don't have it. So that's how I think it's gotten around. But again, I haven't heard anything specifically about any movement legally lately to prevent it from happening.
Okay, so let's jump down to energy usage benchmarking in commercial buildings, and the language says benchmarking. Benchmark existing commercial buildings to establish a baseline and conduct ongoing measuring and tracking in conjunction with energy audits and retrofits. So if the output is an energy usage baseline report that can then be used for some purpose, what is the outcome of that? What's the change?
Well, hopefully improved energy efficiency.
Well, baseline report. Yeah, someone has something to add?
A target. It gives you a target to shoot for, which always gives you a target.
And lets you see what are your underperforming buildings, the ones that need to have the retrofits.
So identify underperforming buildings.
Okay. And I apologize for being so small. So provides target. Okay, so if we have a baseline report that provides targets for energy efficiency, then
Well,
what is the?
Excuse me, the report wouldn't provide targets. The report is basically telling you what the consumption is. You know, another phase would be identifying energy efficient improvements. So the usage baseline is just establishing what the current consumption is.
Yeah, like a starting point.
Mm-hmm. So a follow-up phase to that would be to identify some energy improvements, and that to me would be an outcome.
Okay,
which could be measured against the baseline.
So it provides starting points, and then the impact of having that baseline, and then conduct ongoing measuring and tracking. So
yes.
I guess the provide starting points EE. It's a tracking. So with that tracking method and giving us more of a starting point for improvements, the impacts are well, we have two outcomes. We have one that's showing us the starting point for tracking.
I say identifies improvement opportunities. Like some of those billing the analysis they provide for there's some vendors out there that can give you a kind of demand report where it shows, month after month, like areas within your business you can make improvements on and how much it will save you in demand or billing by doing a billing analysis as well. So it can identify different opportunities for them to make improvements in the building.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm thinking of it as like project plans. The different programs that do the benchmarking produce budgeting, documentation and stuff, so we can build the case better.
On the impacts that targeted improvements, would be better suited for impacts, specified targeted improvements. That kind of language as compared to the outcomes column.
So the reason I'm waffling is because a baseline, if you're comparing, buildings, when you're talking about benchmarking, they're all so different. And so it's really hard to know what your goals are going to be until you truly understand all the uses of the building and how it's used and all of its attributes. So while the output might be some kind of a baseline report and a tracking method, baseline tracking method. And then the outcome provides starting points. Because the report itself isn't tell you anything until you, well, what's the change? I guess that we need to go back to the definitions. So the output is what the strategy produces, which is your baseline report and a methodology. And the outcome is the change generated by that methodology. So the methodology, say that again. What were you just saying? Somebody, was it Fred?
Identify opportunities for improvement or to make improvements.
Yes, that's what I would say.
Okay.
Identify, opportunities for energy improvement, energy efficiency improvements.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually,
And
I would say energy conservation improvements. We call them ECM, energy conservation measures.
okay, and then that's the impact of that is the cost savings.
Well, cost savings,
Lower demand.
lower, consumption footprint, all that.
Ultimately, if they install those measures, of course.
Correct.
So projects would be between the opportunities, more more cost energy saving projects.
Correct.
And then the impact of that is the cost savings and lower demand and all that.
Well, and more earth friendly. So it's not just about cost, but about environmental impact.
I guess you could say there's a jobs impact because you're going to have contractors come in and install those measures.
Yep. Point. All right, so that's benchmarking. And the Green Business Challenge is if the output is resources for small businesses to help them kind of marketability and providing a little more guidance and support for them to be making these changes. What do you see the outcome if we're providing resources for small businesses?
By resource, what exactly do you mean?
So this one says develop and promote a green business challenge and/or certification program that prioritizes small businesses in underserved communities. So if you think about Richmond and all the little businesses that don't have the resources, being green is not necessarily their priority unless we can, provide some kind of incentives or resources. I don't know if there would be grants or something else, but it's a little more of an incentive, I guess, a certification program or a challenge where we are kind of empowering them to make these changes. I don't know.
It would be like a reduction in property taxes or something like that, or some type of business license fee or.
Maybe.
Well, it just could be a lower overall operating cost.
Yeah.
for their business.
That's not working now.
So then from the resources for small businesses and lower operating costs, the outcome would be what?
I mean, I guess possibly a more profitable business. They're more likely to either hire more folks or pay their current employees more, so there's more money into the community. I mean, I guess that's a stretch, but
The outcome, say that one more time.
if their overhead is lower by taking on these initiatives, they possibly may be more profitable, more likely to hire additional employees, or even pay their existing employees a little bit more. So that money ultimately goes back out to the community.
Yeah.
It's quite the stretch goal, but I mean,
No, I think it sounds great. I think there will be a lot like this that they'll kind of end up there, and we're not quite sure. You know, it's something we want to do, but we don't know how yet. So. Right. Okay, let's move on here. So that, oh gosh, I'm on the wrong one now. Efficiency programs, retro commissioning, and high performance building policies both lead to energy efficient buildings. Now, we've already identified when you have more efficient buildings, you have all these things. So in addition to everything else we just said, can you think of any other outcomes or impacts that we want to capture? For retro commissioning, which is for existing commercial buildings to improve the efficiency of its equipment and systems. And then the high performance building policy for commercial buildings over 5,000 square feet through a phased approach. Any other outputs or outcomes or impacts?
They're more than likely to keep businesses, keep them going in the community so they can kind of establish themselves, as opposed to wanting to just either close up or move on. That's in a more efficient facility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that's more, for a benefit for the community in general.
Right. So then this is like.
Health and safety issues for the occupants of the buildings?
Okay. Anything else? Now, a negative, of course, of requiring a performance policy is, what if they can't do it, right?
Correct. I guess more of a penalty, it has to become more of an incentive. I mean, more so than just saying, hey, you'll potentially save money in your power bills. I guess sometimes to push a business to do the right thing, there has to be some type of motivation, and some don't respond well to penalties, whereas they say, all right, well, I'll just move to another area. But others may respond better to some type of incentive for that business. Now, I'm just kind of throwing out stuff there, but that's going to be some of the difficult part if there's a penalty for not doing it.
Right.
Or a combination of a penalty and incentive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, require. So maybe we need to identify another outcome as like incentives. Oh, and I'll just move it up here.
Or if we do make it, if there is a penalty for not doing it, there has to be available resources so it can be done without that much burden to the business. Because if we say, hey, look, here's all the opportunities you have out there to do it, it's up to you to do it. If you choose not to, this is what's going to happen. So there has to be the available resources or grants or something out there that they can do it easily, as opposed to just, hey, you're going to have to front a lot of this money yourself or get loans to do it. Sometimes that can scare off businesses.
Mm. Yes. All right. I might need to reorganize this a little bit, but I like the way you're going. But I don't want to run out of time. So let's go ahead and jump to our next one, which is community construction and energy performance. All right. So this strategy is construction and energy performance for all buildings. We're prioritizing updated energy requirements in all new construction and site plan approvals. The first piece of this is facilitate energy code adoption by working with allied organizations to encourage the Board of Housing and Community Development to adopt the most recent IECC for all commercial and residential buildings. So the output of doing that is an updated energy code. Is that right? Oh, hey, David, you're back.
Hey, yo, our group finished up, and Andrew and Josh were wondering if you could send them over into Wendy's group to listen in.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Okay, let me jump down to you and tell me one more time who we're talking about.
It's Josh and Andrew. Joshua and Andrew.
Andrew, they want to go to which one?
To Wendy's.
Okay, I think I just sent them.
Hey, sorry, everyone.
No, that's fine. I hope that worked. All right. Are we all still here? My screen changed for some reason. You all can hear me, right? Okay. All right. So if the output of this, working with them to adopt the most recent code is an updated energy code, what is the outcome of that? Oh, hey, Andrew, I tried to send you to Wendy's. It didn't work? You're on mute.
I hit the wrong button. If you can go ahead and do that, that'd be great. Sorry.
Okay, so Josh and Andrew want to go to Wendy's, or just you?
I would like that as well.
Oh, okay, there you are. All right, that worked.
Dawn, I believe I had control of all these screens a minute ago. I believe I just gave it back to you. I don't know.
Oh, that's why my screen would have changed. I thought that.
I kept doing that. Yeah, sorry about that.
I think I see your screen because I see myself. Okay.
Stop presenting. I got to click on that. My God, I don't know how I got control. I swear.
Doesn't take much. All right. Again, outcome of the updated energy code.
Where's the shared screen?
What's the change generated by an updated energy code? We have more efficient new construction.
Yes, and I guess it's enforceable at that point. I mean.
Yeah.
And could lead to increased job opportunities, having the contractors putting in the efficiency measures.
Yep. All right, so more efficient new construction, and someone said something else.
It's an enforceable code.
Yes,
You have
enforceable.
to do it.
And what does that lead to? Maybe that's the environmental piece. It's jobs and it's lower energy and demand and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Anything else you want to add to the code? Oops. Yes. Again, when we're thinking about these impacts, we're also trying to identify the language that is going to help us get these strategies implemented, the decision makers that are putting the resources behind the strategies. So we want to think about the impacts that are important to their priorities as well. So we talk about the mayoral priorities or the community's priorities. All right, so then how about the energy efficiency standards enforcement? So during plan review, if we're asking that there be more trained building inspectors to really thoroughly understand these new energy efficiency requirements during the plan review phase. And then we're cultivating the department's capacity to enforce the letter and spirit of building energy code provisions. So someone in our working group put that language in there, enforce letter and spirit of building energy code provisions. So this would probably be a good opportunity to identify further what does that mean? So we're saying that energy efficiency standards enforcement, the output, more trained building inspectors. So if we have more trained building inspectors in the areas of energy efficiency, what's the outcome?
Greater adherence.
Hmm. And if we have greater, then we go into the lower energy demand. Any other impacts of greater adherence to energy efficiency requirements? I think if we were really strict, could it deter from businesses wanting to build here?
Yeah, that's possible.
What's the word for that? When they leave.
Relocate?
Sorry.
Go ahead. What'd you say?
Oh, I just said de-incentivize could be another word.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, there's two things. You could cause businesses to relocate and also discourage businesses from coming into the community.
Yeah, it's tough to have additional building standards if it's singled out to one locality. If all of the surrounding area had the same type of standards, it'd be better. But yeah, when you're just specifically one locality has it, that is quite the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there was some other funding, bucket out there that is saying if you agree to move into this business and you're going to employ a certain amount of employees, this fund can help to cover the cost of those additional requirements. But again, it all comes to where do you get those funds from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. But on the flip side, more efficient new construction.
Right. Unless they can show that that building the property up to those codes will be the same price or lower, it's always going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I know some people in one of the groups, I can't remember which one it was arguing that building some newer properties that are, zero emissions and are a passive building is less expensive than building a traditional building. Maybe in theory, but sometimes in practice, some of these things can be a little bit more of a challenge. Just as we were talking earlier about when you put in some of these new measures, there is an additional cost to maintain them, depending on the measure.
Well, there's also additional cost of construction in many cases. To go, the greener you go, sometimes the higher the initial cost, the lower the operating cost over the life cycle, but the initial cost of construction up front can be higher with green initiatives.
Yep.
Which is why we have the CPACE program.
Right.
I was listening to that argument, Joe, and I was biting my tongue off because of I get into this topic all the time. Health and safety concerns have to be met. When we tightened up all of our houses, what happened? We're rotting the walls on the inside, like the Earthcraft certified, the first realm of energy efficiency, even back in the 70s, probably when you started. So what we got to do is the ASHRAE 62.2. We got the bathroom fans that we got to bring in. So where's the cost of being healthy inside your energy efficient house? You know what I mean? That's
Yeah, there's cost of construction and there's the cost of staying healthy. Those are two different things, but very interdependent.
Yeah, which is why we're really pushing towards, all these co-benefits and the life cycle costing, like thinking about these impacts, not in isolation. That's a great example, what you two just discussed.
It is a good example, but initially when a builder's in there and they're putting up either whether it's residential properties or commercial businesses, the main cost to them right now is that money up front, how much it's costing them to get it, because they just move on to the next job at that point.
Right.
I just acquired an account with one of the country's largest builders, and I'll tell you where he builds volumes up there in Fredericksburg, and the reality is they pay us as a third-party inspector, and we are meeting code, bypassing code is with building air tightness. But when those guys build at volume, the costs aren't that much. It's not that much, and he's actually paying a group to look at his work and say, no, you didn't do it right. He's actually paying us to do that. So, you know, you look at it, at what kind of scale are you looking at? You're looking at that builder who builds 5, 10, 20 a year, or you the guy who's doing a thousands, you know?
All right, well, how about this last one on energy efficiency standards enforcement? You know, as we all know, with site plan review, they're so strapped. It's hard to do what we can with what we have. So if there's more department capacity, it doesn't necessarily mean more staff. It could be more, you know, some more efficient programming or scheduling or online resources, or maybe it's contracting or something. What's the outcome of that? Like shorter, I think there are a couple. I think there's like a shorter timeline maybe for getting approvals and a happier business community. I don't know. What do you all think?
Those are could be two possible outcomes of that. If it works perfectly, yes.
Hey, Jeff.
Hello.
How are you?
We're good. Alex slayed it in the terms of the youth. So we're back. It was great.
Awesome. Well, we're just on this last one, actually. So, Jeff, let's say we had more efficient site plan review with more department capacity. That could be more employees, more efficient programming, scheduling, whatever. We're just on this last one. So the outcomes would be a shorter timeline for site plan approvals. Maybe it's also happier business community, right? Can you think of any other impacts, positive or negative? Oh, you're on mute.
Revenue, the quicker you can build me new buildings, the quicker they can be picked up by the assessor, and the quicker I can tax them and turn them into, give them to Jason and budget.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this one?
What number slide are you guys on?
This is slide number 36.
I kind of lost my slides. I can't see them now.
I
don't know what happened. I can see you guys, but I can't see my slides.
Oh. Yeah, I think when Bill took over the screen, it stopped sharing. I'm sorry. All this time I thought I was sharing. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, better.
Sorry. Okay, so on this
question when I can focus on the statement.
Yeah. Sorry. So we have construction and energy performance with 2 subcomponents, adopting the codes. So we did that one. Now we're on this energy efficiency standards enforcement. So this is more department capacity in the site plan review realm, which the outcome is a shorter timeline for site plan approvals, which leads to a happier business community, which leads to more revenue for the city. Can you guys think of any other impacts that we want to capture? And if not, I think we're done with our 2. And it looks like group 4, 5 came back. How'd that go, Alex?
I think it went pretty well. We got a lot of good suggestions.
Fantastic. Well, while we're waiting for the other groups to come back, if you want to click through some of the other slides and see what they came up with and certainly add anything to them. I think each facilitator, you know, I think it'll be helpful for us to look at each other's, and that'll just make them even better. Because we all do it a little differently. I can just show you the example that we got from the C40 mapping document. They had LED lighting programs. So the output would be that the lights are installed. The outcomes are reduced energy consumption and demand and improved lighting in poorly lit neighborhoods. And then the impacts are improved visibility, leading to reduced crime, temporary low-skilled job creation, and then lower energy-related spending, leading to reduced public spending. So that's just a simple example. And we can kind of fold that up into the energy management program one too.
Dawn, that certification that you have about infrastructure, that the certification that you have regarding municipal infrastructure, have you applied that yet?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
You went to a class and got certified in one of the like lead type programs, but it was geared towards municipal and infrastructure type bodies of work.
You mean Envision?
Envision, yeah. Have you done anything with that actively with the city?
No, but I think it's one of the priorities of the Green City Commission. So I think we'll start hearing more.
Yeah, okay, all right. I was just curious because I'd seen that come up somewhere else.
Oh, right.
And
yes.
it's an obscure little body of work. Not many people have heard of that.
Right.
Could you say the name again? Because that's we were saying whatever lead is for municipal, is that effectively what it is?
Well, it's lead for horizontal infrastructure. So it could be stormwater improvements, parks, roadways, any kind of construction that's not a building.
Which is a lot of energy, a lot of carbon, carbon impacts.
Mm-hmm.
Did that replace lead ND, or is it kind of?
I'm not familiar.
Lead ND was lead for neighborhood development, so it's kind of all the things between how buildings interact and interface with one another instead of building by building.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
This slide with the LED streetlights kind of brought it to mind.
You know, what's funny is I can't see how to pull everyone back.
Another one for that is Pete Briel and RVA311 have less calls if a lot of those are for streetlights and for infrastructure like that.
Great, it looks like everyone's coming back. I think Wendy's room is. Let's see if I can close these. Is everyone? No, we're still waiting for a couple to come back. All right, I see Wendy back. I see Alex and David, and is Alexis back? Yes. All right, we're all here. So how'd that go? Let's hear some feedback. What'd you think?
I thought it went pretty well. I mean, some of it's, driven by semantics, which can turn into a rabbit hole. But, we cut through it pretty well, I thought.
Great. Any other thoughts?
You guys are awesome for actually making the map in real time. I'm sure that's a lot of, while we're just thinking of things, you guys are typing and moving and rearranging, and I thank all of you guys for that.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, this has been a big learning curve for us. We've been spending a lot of time doing this amongst ourselves to try to make sure we're really clear on the difference between an output, outcome and impact, because the rabbit holes, that's no joke. It's easy to go down the rabbit holes, but we really want to be focusing on the most important impacts. Any other feedback? All right, so again, what this is leading to is our team is going to then take all of these maps, try to clean it up a lot, and it's, help identify what the indicators will be at the objective level. What metrics do we really want to capture to so we can measure the success of the plan? So that's kind of what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. And then the nice thing about these maps is it's between this and all of the feedback, because you guys have been brainstorming. We've been taking notes on everything you've been saying. This has gone out to the community. This has gone out to staff. This has gone through the other working groups, through the roundtables. So we have a lot of language that we are now kind of piecing together. So I think we have a skeleton framework to get us to where we need to be. At the next time, we'll be talking more specifically about the implementation and accountability. Which departments are going to own this? Which stakeholder groups need to be involved in making these strategies successful? When we talk about funding and financing, are there certain ones that can only come from budgets? Are there potential partnerships? Are there grant scenarios? All of those details that we need to start, capturing and filling in the blanks. That's where we're going next with this. So I just want to thank you all for your time today. This is really helpful to have this big group here and this amazing brain trust. Really, really grateful for your time. There's a survey link. We'd love to hear your feedback. And back to the survey information and feedback, at the end of the last round of working group meetings, we had a lot of comments and questions that we pulled together. So in the email I sent out yesterday, if you kind of scroll to the bottom, there are about 10 comments or questions that we then responded to. And we went ahead and sent it out to all the working groups because I think it's good information so that everyone can be on the same page about some of those things. Some of it's about engagement, some of it's about what about the strategies that we didn't prioritize? What are we doing with those? And just, those are being captured. They're just going to be probably more of an appendix, something that our office will keep track of, and maybe they'll be more important during the next iteration of this planning process. We'll revisit it annually to consider the status. But other than that, be sure to go back to that email if you want to dig more deeply into our responses, and share any other feedback in the survey link. We do read it. That's where we, take your advice and try to improve for each meeting. So if you have any updates that you want to share with us, or events or resources that you want to put in the chat or in that slide number 2, feel free to do that. Otherwise, the floor is yours. We'll be here for a few more minutes if you want to ask us questions, or you can have a few minutes back to your day, and we will see you next month on July 14th at 11 a.m.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Dawn, thank you. I'm going to take off.
All right,
Thanks,
take
Bill.
care.
See ya.
Bye.
Hello, hello. So what'd you guys think?
Oops, let's see, Bill's still there. It's good.
This is so strange. Oh, every Wednesday. I'm sorry, I've got to read something real quick.
Let's see. I'm not sure Bill logged off. I still see him there.
Yeah, I've got to respond to Rosemary about something. She thinks we have a
Okay.
meeting in 6 minutes. So let me.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Oh, but I've got to stop the recording. Here we go.